Welcome to Enigma's Analysis. I'm your host, Mr. Enigma, and you'll have to forgive the lack of video or hilarity in this video, but it's the only way I could get this quickly uploaded in time before the regular season begins. And I wanted to update my predictions from the offseason, which are still a hilarious romp and somewhat relevant if you want to go back and watch them, which you absolutely should. But some changes have taken place. There's been COVID opt-outs, plenty of training camp injuries. So let's rattle off these predictions. Let's get on with it. In the AFC East, we have the Buffalo Bills. This is a roster with very few real holes. They're well coached. Josh Allen's okay. I don't necessarily trust him in the playoffs or in big moments, but he's got a lot of real weapons this year. I say they go 11-5 and win the division. Yeah, I said it. The Miami Dolphins, their two biggest weaknesses from last year have been seriously patched up, their offensive line and their defense. This is a bad year to have a new team with a bunch of fresh faces. Fitzpatrick is likely to regress like he always does after a good year. If Tua has to come in, that's probably bad news. It's tempting to be really optimistic with these guys, but they'll probably stumble out of the gate early. The Dolphins go 7-9. The New England Patriots, let's be clear, we still don't know what Cam Newton is or isn't at this point in his career. They lost 1 million guys both on the field and on the sideline thanks to opt-outs and other personnel changes. Bill Belichick probably won't let this team be awful. I say the Patriots go 8-8, and football fans around the world rejoice. The New York Jets, their best defensive players either opted out or left the team altogether. The offensive line still sounds pretty sorry, and Sam Darnold has no weapons to throw to, especially since Le'Veon Bell and Adam Gase seem like they're going to rip each other's heads off at any moment. You thought last year was rough for the Jets. This time around, they go 6-10. The Baltimore Ravens, Earl Thomas leaving left the biggest hole in this roster, which still isn't much of one. They're loaded from top to bottom. It's really hard to repeat a 14-2 season. They're still going to be awesome, but maybe they regress a little bit. The rest of the AFC North is going to be a lot better this year, and I don't necessarily trust Lamar Jackson yet in the playoffs. Still, the Ravens go 12-4 and win the division. The Cincinnati Bengals, they still have a lousy offensive line, even though Joe Burrow has a lot of nice weapons. AJ Green is still banged up as of this recording. Their defense is likely a smidge better, but still pretty bad. This is a tough division. The Bengals go 4-12. The Cleveland Browns finally patched up their offensive line, although last I heard there were some injuries. Baker Mayfield's got endless weapons, although he still needs to establish chemistry with OBJ. Myles Garrett and a few other players aside, their defense isn't all that threatening. Kevin Stefanski seems like a real coach who will whip these guys into shape, but we'll see how long it takes. I got the Cleveland Browns at 9-7, barely taking the last wildcard spot in the AFC. The Pittsburgh Steelers, this team has quietly loaded up from top to bottom. The only real question is, how is Ben Roethlisberger going to do? All reports in training camp suggest that he's just fine. Even decent quarterback play should allow the young receiving corps to step up and keep the defense from being on the field for the whole game. I do have some questions about the offensive line and the running game, but Ben Roethlisberger being back should mitigate some of those issues as opposed to last year where defenses were just loading up the box every play. I'm somewhat cautiously saying the Steelers go 10-6 and take the top wildcard spot in the AFC. The AFC South, the Houston Texans, their defense was bad last year and it only got worse. Deshaun Watson's still great, but he doesn't have his bailout option in DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to have to learn to spread the ball around to a bunch of good number 2 receivers. He doesn't have a true number 1. I don't really trust Bill O'Brien to coach this incarnation of the team to the playoffs. I have the Texans going 7-9. The Indianapolis Colts, despite the quarterback change, they're mostly built to be a hard running team. There's some questions about their receivers and their secondary. They have an excellent linebacking core and offensive line. I'm a little bit skeptical of Phillip Rivers at this point in his career, but I think he gives them some much-needed explosiveness. I think the Colts go 9-7, but it's enough to win a tough AFC South division. The Jacksonville Jaguars are clearly tanking, regardless of what word you want to use to describe it. There's really no position group that stands out as being great. The NFL's wacky enough that the Jaguars won a few games, but not many. They're going 3-13. The Tennessee Titans went Super Saiyan in the playoffs last year, but I expect some regression, whether it be specifically from Ryan Tannehill or something happens to Derrick Henry. They are missing Jack Conklin at right tackle now. I think that's going to hurt them. Because their defense did so well in the playoffs, it's easy to forget how mediocre they were at the second half of the regular season. Jadeveon Clowney offers some much-needed help to their pass rush. I had the Tennessee Titans going 9-7, which is what they always do, and up until yesterday, I was going to have them just narrowly missing the playoffs, but a big injury that we'll talk about in a moment changed things, so yes, now I have the Titans taking the number 6 seed in the AFC. The AFC West, you got the Denver Broncos. We don't really know what Drew Lock is after only 5 games, but the administration is clearly excited about him. He has tons of offensive weaponry, and the defense with Bradley Chubb back especially should be pretty good. Oh wait, no sooner did I record that than I find out that Von Miller is injured for the year. Well, so much for your playoff hopes, Denver Broncos. I have you going 8-8. Then you have the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're largely the same team as they were last year. The big X factor is how well their defense plays throughout the year. They picked it up substantially at the end of last season after being pretty lousy. There's not a ton to say. Barring some major injury, the Chiefs are going to be great again. 12-4 and a division win for the Chiefs. The Las Vegas Raiders don't really have much to talk about on defense. Derek Carr is going to have to carry the offense despite being a conservative player. He also has little in the way of wide receivers other than a first-round rookie. So the Raiders are mostly going to be a running back and tight end show, and I just don't trust John Gruden. Raiders go 6-10. The LA Chargers have a very good defense, although losing Derwin James hurts them immensely. The team can never really seem to stay healthy. I don't necessarily trust Tyrod Taylor without a ton of weapons, and once you get past Keenan Allen and the okay but not great Austin Eckler, there's not a lot of that. You probably don't want Justin Herbert coming in this year. Despite Taylor's winning record and the team being well coached, I have the Chargers going 7-9. Over in the NFC East, we have the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not entirely sold on Mike McCarthy as a coach, even though it has to be an improvement. The offense is absolutely loaded, although they have had some offensive line injuries during training camp. I don't love Dak, but I think he's good enough. The secondary could be better, but with a weak division and a banged-up Philadelphia Eagles, I think the Cowboys go 10-6 and just barely win the division. The New York Giants, Daniel Jones surprised everybody with being very good, although he couldn't hold on to the ball to save his life. Other than Saquon Barkley, though, he doesn't really have a ton to work with. Their defense isn't anything to write home about either. The Giants kind of seem to be treading water year to year. I say they only go 5-11. The Philadelphia Eagles made great strides to patch up their weaknesses from last year, mostly their wide receiver group and their secondary. But before the year has even started, the Eagles have once again been hit by the injury bug. Their offensive line is a patchwork. They should have a few good receivers out there, but it's tough to say who's actually going to be on the field come week 1. If they can keep everyone healthy, they have a high ceiling, but that's a big if. For now, I'm going to say they go 10-6, but lose the tiebreaker to the Cowboys, so they take a wild card spot. The Washington football team will benefit greatly from Ron Rivera's coaching. At the same time, while Dwayne Haskins had very little to work with, we also didn't see much to suggest that he's the quarterback of the future. It wouldn't surprise me if we actually see Alex Smith go under center at some point. They only have one offensive weapon of note, and while the defense doesn't look bad, it doesn't seem like it's ready to carry a team. Washington will be a 4-12 football team. The NFC North, the Chicago Bears continue to drop the ball on offense. They brought in Nick Foles just to start Mitch Trubisky. Their offensive line still looks weak. They also have an injured starting running back. Their defense continues to look great, but just like last year, they're going to be asked to carry the team. I say the Bears go 7-9. The Detroit Lions got Matt Stafford back and may be giving him a bit more of a running game than he's had in a while. They drafted a cornerback in the first round, but I still say their secondary looks a little suspect. I'm not a fan of Matt Patricia, and I don't trust the organization in general. The outlook on the Lions is one of the most polarizing in the league. I say the Lions go 6-10. Green Bay Packers were a weak 13-3 team, but they still were the best team in the division. They didn't change that much in the offseason. Rodgers isn't what he was, but he's still good. Their defense is very fast, but can be shoved around by big, strong teams. I think they have the number on the rest of the division. I say they go 10-6 and win the NFC North yet again. Minnesota Vikings got a lot younger on defense. I do think it will be good in time, but it might take a little bit. I think as long as they have Kirk Cousins under center, they have a ceiling. It's also going to take some time to fill the hole left by Stephon Diggs. In my book, the Vikings go 9-7, just barely missing the playoffs. The NFC South, it looks like the same old with the Falcons. They barely kept the same coach. They still look like they're going to rely completely on Matt Ryan to carry them in the passing game, which is not a winning formula. All the same question marks about their offensive line and defense remain intact. I'm pessimistically saying the Falcons only go 6-10. The Carolina Panthers have a new coach and a new just about everything else. The defense is really young and is going to struggle mightily. Even with Christian McCaffrey and his nice group of receivers, it's a lot to ask Terry Bridgewater to push the ball down the field consistently and carry an explosive offense to get you wins. I'm sure initially they're going to miss Ron Rivera too. The Panthers go 5-11 this year. The New Orleans Saints, like every year, have a stacked roster. They will probably dominate the regular season. At this point in his career, Drew Brees is not the most trustworthy quarterback in big situations. That won't matter until the offseason where they inevitably underachieve. Until then, the Saints go 12-4 and win their division. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are absolutely loaded on offense. They're going to score a lot of points. Their front seven on defense is extremely nasty, but people seem to be missing just how bad their secondary is. They're going to get stuck in a lot of shootouts, many of which they will win, but that's not necessarily the most consistent formula for success. Still, the Bucs go 10-6 and get a wild card berth into the playoffs. Lastly, the NFC West. You got the Arizona Cardinals, who are looking much better than they were last year. Kyler Murray's only going to get better, especially with a strong group of wide receivers. Their offensive line is better, but still not very good. Despite a few big pickups, they're still going to be lousy on defense, meaning that they're always going to have to win shootouts. It's tempting to go higher, but the Cardinals go 7-9. The LA Rams haven't fixed their offensive line issues, and they still appear to have no running game. Jared Goff is good but not great, and it's a lot to ask him to carry the offense. The defense is certainly above average, but they're not special. Despite Sean McVay's coaching, I'm not impressed by this Rams team. I say they go 7-9 in a tough division. San Francisco 49ers, once the receivers get healthy, will largely be the same team as they were last year, though they will miss Emmanuel Sanders, but they improved drastically at left tackle, which already wasn't a weak position for them. Don't expect much regression from the 49ers. They go 11-5 and win the division. The Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson will continue to cover for many of the deficiencies of this roster. Still, their offensive line is lousy, and their defensive line is pretty pathetic. They always win a lot of close games thanks to Russell Wilson, but sooner or later their luck's going to run out a little bit. Somehow or another they still go 10-6 and take a wild card spot. So back to the AFC, my playoff predictions are as follows. A Kansas City Chiefs team beats a Cleveland Browns defense that is not prepared to handle them. For the Bills against the Titans, Buffalo shuts down whatever juice is left in the Henry Tannehill combo. A top-notch Steelers defense takes advantage of a weak passing game from the Indianapolis Colts and advances to the next round. Then we got division rivals duking it out in the second round with the Ravens facing the Steelers. I'm realistic, the Ravens are a little bit better, and they finally overcome Lamar Jackson's playoff woes. Then Josh Allen cannot keep up with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, so the Bills are eliminated there. And in the conference finals, we get yet another showdown between the Chiefs and the Ravens. I say the Chiefs take this one. It's basically a coin flip, but I trust them more in the playoffs. Over in the NFC, we start the first round with a division rivalry, the 49ers versus the Seahawks. The 49ers are a better team. They run their way to victory. Then we got two surprisingly similar teams facing off in the Dallas Cowboys versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not going to pick Dak Prescott over Tom Brady. The Bucs take it. Then we got an interesting matchup between the Eagles and the Packers. Just like during the regular season last year, the strong offensive and defensive lines of the Eagles shove the fast but kind of weak Packers around and pull a slight upset to advance. Then in the division round, the Saints meet the Buccaneers for the third time in the year, with sportscasters playing up the Breeze-Brady matchup. The Bucs' pass defense fails them, and the Saints take that one. And talking heads all over the country ask if Tom Brady still has it or not. Then the 49ers and the Eagles face off. By this point, the Eagles are probably hobbling on crutches, so I say the Niners take it. Then in the conference finals, the New Orleans Saints face off with the San Francisco 49ers. The Saints do what they do every year, which, depending on your point of view, they either get screwed over by a bad call or they choke outright. However you want to look at it, the 49ers win. So yes, I am predicting a repeat matchup of last year's Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers. In this clearly absurd and unlikely scenario, they're basically the same two teams facing off yet again, except the 49ers are going to be playing hungrier. I also think the Chiefs will be more likely to be hobbled by a big injury by this point in the season. I think the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes' ability to pull out massive comebacks late in the game finally runs out here. San Francisco 49ers avenge their loss from last year and become Super Bowl champions. Would I bet money on this happening? Absolutely not. It sounds as ridiculous to me as it probably does to you, but hey, predictions are fun to make and also impossible. Let's be real here, it's probably going to be two teams we never even dreamed of being in the Super Bowl, because that's how it usually goes. So that's what the 2020 NFL season looks like according to Mr. Enigma's wacky crystal ball. Feel free to like this wannabe podcast masquerading as a video that I've created. This might be the new format going forward if I am to quickly and efficiently upload quote-unquote videos. Thanks for listening. Enigma out.